Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on just the Arrowverse and DCTV as a whole. So we are in the final run of DCTV on the CW, and while we've talked about and considered the Arrowverse, which has dominated most of DC's run of the CW, to just be the shows that were either set on the main Earth, whether that's Earth 1 or Earth Prime for the majority of the time, or played into the crossovers most of the time, so Supergirl gets in due to that. There is a lot of people that consider the Arrowverse to just be any show that's DC related that aired on the CW after Arrow premiered back in 2012. But anyway, in this video, we are finalizing a run of videos I say recently, but I think it's gone on for well over a month because I just obviously split them up and there was a bit of a break in between them, where I ranked every Arrowverse show's first, second, and third seasons from worst to best. And that's just because there's a decent conglomerate of shows that at least had 3 seasons where you can include them in that list and be scattered throughout those videos. We had 8 shows that were included, all these shows having a minimum of 3 seasons. So Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, Legends, Black Lightning, Batwoman, Stargirl, and Superman and Lois were included. They were the ones there. If you want to watch the videos where we rank the first and second and third seasons and where they, correlate on the list, all those 3 videos will be linked in the description of the video if you want to go check them down below. But to finish up this sort of like a ranking series, if you want to put it, and it's pretty fittingly, I think, even though I wasn't planning to do it, it just sort of popped up while I was making the 3rd season video and thought, oh, maybe I could do this as a final ranking video and it makes sense. And I think we're going to do it because I'm making this video right now. So we're going to be ranking the final seasons of each of these respective shows from best to worst, whether they had 3 seasons, 5 seasons, or 9 seasons. Just an even playing field. Just, we're not ranking the show as a whole, just the final season's quality, starting at number 7 and ending at number 1. You might be like, hold on, you mentioned 8 shows before. Of course, we can't include Superman and Lois in this list because that show isn't done. It has its final season coming out at the end of the year, and I would wait until it's over, but it just doesn't come out till the end of the year, and I'm not waiting that long. But yeah, so we're going to go from 7 to 1 compared to, from 8 to 1, like in the other videos. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know your opinions and options in the comment section down below. What would your ranking be? Whether you just have a stab in the dark, even if you haven't watched any of the shows, or you just list the 4, 5, 6, 7, or maybe 2 shows that you watched, at least in regards to the final seasons. Let me know in the comment section down below, all that, as well as any opinions you might have on my ranking. You might be like, you're an idiot. Why is that at 1? It should be at 4. I don't know, you might have an opinion like that. But yeah, let me know in the comments. And of course, if you want to enjoy the video, want to drop a like, it takes 2 seconds. So yeah, as I said, we're not doing 8, we're starting at 7. So technically, that could be like a show that maybe gets a bit of a better run. It might not finish in 8th spot again. I don't know. But at number 7, the worst out of the final seasons of these contending shows. And I think it's actually the worst season. Funnily enough, I think 2 of these shows, the final season is probably their worst season. And it's the 2 bottom ranked ones. So the first one at number 7, coming in last spot as the worst final season, is Supergirl. I think even the most diehard Supergirl fan would admit this season was pretty bad, and it's just a bit all over the joint. They didn't really know what they were going to do. I wouldn't really recommend Supergirl as a show from beginning to end anyway, but I would definitely say, like, hey, maybe just stop around this point and don't watch the final season. I think the finale for it is actually pretty decent. I think it actually does a decent job in regards to wrapping the show up in a somewhat satisfying way, though leaving it open-ended to the point where they're not killing off the character or just going back to space or something like that. I think that actually ended off pretty well, but the actual last season as a whole is pretty poor, and that's maybe being a bit light. I think it's the worst season of the show, competing with season 1. I think season 1's probably the second worst. But so I know, is that fitting that the first and last season are probably the 2 worst seasons of the show? I don't know. But for me, Supergirl comes in last spot in regards to this best list. At number 6, another show where I think its final season is its worst season. I think a lot of people that watch the show and are fans of the show would probably agree, even if they don't maybe dislike it as much as I do or some other people do. But that's Black Lightning. Black Lightning's final season was... There's a lot of like rumors in regards to stuff that happened behind the scenes. I don't know if any of it has been like confirmed or anything like that, but it definitely feels like it when you're watching the show. It's just all over the joint once again. There's like weird replacements and then non-replacements and things happening back and forth. It's just a mess of a season. I think it's Black Lightning's worst season. I know a lot of people don't like season 2 of Black Lightning, I think it is, but I think this final season, which was season 4, is just... I think it's a clear outlier in regards to just quality, and I think it's just easily the worst season of the show. So, yeah, It's the final season. It's the worst of the show, so it's probably going to be low on the ranking list, isn't it? At number 6. At least it's not. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Is it actually probably worse than Supergirl's final season is really bad. I think it's Black Lightning is probably a bit better, and I think it also had less episodes. That's maybe the thing that gives Black Lightning a bit of an edge. You don't have to watch as much of it. And number 5, like I think once we go from like 5 up to probably 3, maybe 2, it's probably pretty contentious. Like I think a lot of people, if you've watched all these shows, would probably have Supergirl and Black Lightning as your second and first last choice. But in regards to these other ones from like 5 through to 3, maybe even 2, it could be very drastic. Even 1, like some people might have a different show at number 1. But for me at number 5, I have Legends of Tomorrow. Now, Legends of Tomorrow was a show where, like, this wasn't meant to be its final season. Like, with Supergirl, it was a planned final season. With Black Lightning, it was like a half-half thing. Like, I think they got a decent amount of time to wrap it up. But I don't think it was, like, planned from the get-go for this to be the final season. But with Legends, this was not meant to be the final season. There was no, like, it ends on a literal cliffhanger setting up the next season. They weren't planning on ending it. So this is, I think... Well, no, probably the next one after it as well. They sort of go hand in hand in regards to not being able to actually finish off the show, and they won't really set to be a final season. But Legends Tomorrow season 5 is just very messy, and it's once again it's hard to judge it and compare it to some of these other shows because it wasn't planning to be the final season. And sometimes you expect certain things from a final season and satisfying things from a final season and tying a bow and stuff like that. Legends didn't do any of that because it wasn't meant to, outside of like one character who was leaving the show anyway. So because it's messy and everything like that, there's still some really fun things that happens in the show. And Legends as a show at this point had gone like full on crazy, weird, sort of zany, wackies, you know, all that stuff, Looney Tunes pretty much in live action. It's just not great at the same time. So I think it definitely deserves to be at number 5, but I think it's better than Black Lightning and Supergirl's final season for sure. At number 4, and you might be able to guess what the show is, saying I said that it went hand in hand sort of with Legend of Tomorrow, and that's because they were cancelled on the exact same day and they didn't get to finish their show, and that's Batwoman. It only had 3 seasons. There's only one of the show here which had 3 seasons, but I haven't mentioned it yet. Batwoman is, this is probably its most consistent season 3. I think it actually like tried to be its own show after season 2 became this like reboot, reset of sorts. And season 3 was allowed to do its own thing. It still wasn't great. There was elements I just did not like at all in this season, and I think season 1 of Batwoman's the best season of the show, but it's not by far. And that's just because I think season 1 of Batwoman's more consistent in its quality, while Batwoman season 3 might have a good episode and then a really bad episode, like the week after it or something like that. So Batwoman's final season, similar to Legends, it wasn't meant to be. There's literally nothing saying it's a final season. It literally sets up a season 4 villain in the end credit scene, which didn't get to play off, unfortunately, if you were a fan of Batwoman. But yeah, at least it's not that low. This is the highest I think Batwoman's been on a list. It was, I think, in all the 3 ones that we did before, it was either in last spot or second last spot, I think. I'm not too sure, but definitely wasn't anywhere near the top 3 at the very least. So minor win, even though this was the season that got cancelled. And number 3, surprisingly getting into the top 3, and you might be going, this is bias. I don't think it is. I think it's just how it happens, because a lot of these final seasons just aren't that great in quality. I think there's only one show here which legitimately has a great final season. But at number 3, we have The Flash. The Flash, look, we all know the Red Death arc sucked. It just wasn't good. There was some little good bits here and there. Like I think the premiere episode's pretty decent, and I think even the second episode was like okay. But the rest of the Red Death arc, when Red Death's actually there, is pretty arse, let's be completely honest. But of course, this season has 2 of the best episodes in the entire show. Obviously, the episode with Oliver Queen, Diggle, Wally West return with Bloodwork, and then of course the episode that ties into the season 1 finale. 2 of the best episodes of the show, but it's sprinkled in with some pretty bad episodes as well, and just some like useless filler in a final season where you're like, why is that here? And just wasn't interesting filler either. Like, do it with some characters that people are actually interested in, and they did it with characters that people were like, wait, what? Like, you just were like, why are we here? So it makes you wonder, like, if maybe that Red Death arc specifically was a bit better. Is this a bit higher on the list? I would say yes. I know people complain about the finale and the villain fight. It's like 3 minutes of the finale, and I think the rest of the finale after that is pretty good. If not, I don't want to say great, because it's definitely not great for me. It's like an 8.5 up, but it's definitely like a 7.5, 8, which I would say is a good finale score, definitely compared to other shows. But yeah, there's just elements of this final season which aren't very good, but then some elements that are just fantastic, to the point where I think it deserves number 3 in comparison to these other finales or these other final seasons, but definitely not higher than the other 2. But at number 2, just missing out on the number 1 spot, is Arrow. Now, Arrow, to me, the first half of this final season is great. It's some of the best Arrow we've ever had, especially those first like 3 episodes. I was like, whoa. They were like almost like, I think the first episode's definitely a 10 out of 10. The other 2 after that are like a 9, 9.5. They're like, they nailed it, exactly what they needed to do, and I was so hyped watching them. Of course, I've made it very vocal. I'm not the biggest fan of when the kids came into it. I thought they brought the quality down a bit and the focus sort of turned away, and it was clearly them trying to set up a spin-off, which of course one of the episodes in this final season is dedicated to, which is the second last episode. I think it was whatever the second last episode. I think it was 10 episodes. I think it's episode 9, but I might be wrong in that. But anyway, it was the second last episode. And then of course we had the series finale weirdly placed the week after that. But I think like the first half of this season for the most part, and even the episode just before Crisis, are like top tier and extremely well done. It's sort of probably the opposite of the Flash's final season, where like, I don't know, actually, I don't even know if that's the best way to put it, but it's definitely not enough to take number 1 away, because number 1, I think their final season nailed it pretty much from beginning to end. So Arrow's definitely not going to get there, but I think there's a bit of a gap between the Flash and Arrow, and then of course number 1 as well. So number 1 and 2, I think are clear number 1 and 2s, but then the rest are a bit of a drop off after that. But at number 1, if you're keeping score at home, you should be able to guess who number 1 is, who I think had the best final season out of the selected 7 of the previous 8 shows that we were talking about, and that is Stargirl. Stargirl's final season, I think, is probably the best season of the show, though I think all the seasons of Stargirl are pretty similar in quality. I think they're all great seasons. I think it's just a great show as a whole. So it's not necessarily like this is like a stands above the rest compared to Stargirl, because all the seasons are pretty similar in quality in my opinion, which is a definite compliment because I think they're all great. But season 3 of Stargirl has the murder mystery thing. I've talked about it before, obviously, in some of these list things, obviously, especially the last video, which we'll talk about the 3rd seasons of these shows. But I think this is clearly the best of the final seasons, but it's sort of similar to Legends and Batwoman to an extent, where this was not clearly meant to be the final season of the show. They even, in the finale of this season, set up some stuff for a potential season 4, but then they did do the due diligence to film a scene in case the show didn't come back, because they had a feeling, and it's the actual final scene of the show in the series finale, which does tie a bow on the show, or at least sort of, you know, close the show out to an extent. It's not perfect, that closing, but it's it's probably as best as they could have done on short notice and just filming one specific scene. But I think Stargirl is clearly the best final season out of the shows here. However, as I said, Superman and Lois is not in this list because the final season hasn't come out yet. So hopefully, fingers crossed, and it's no offense to Stargirl, but just hoping for a good final season, that Superman and Lois could be on top of this list come the end of this year. So fingers crossed that happens, or at least it's similar in quality to the point where maybe it's a really, really close second to Stargirl. But yeah, maybe when that comes out, we can redo this list. I'm not too sure. We'll wait and see. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you drop a like and it shows support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts on this video. What are your rankings? What are your opinions on my rankings? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.